there is no one to help us, then Krishna will come to help. Wonderful song with so many nice feeling that constantly we hear the bumblebee wandering throughout the night. Every moment remind us about the presence of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna who wandered around the Yamuna river throughout the night. Hare Bol. So I will read just one paragraph that we read yesterday because our memory is so dull. I don't even remember where we were. Judy was another person who was considering initiation. And I asked her, this is Bobby's talking like that I asked her what she was going to do about it. And then she said, quote, I'm thinking about it, unquote. And then she told me she had decided she would get initiated and give up all her bad habits. Bob says, I began to think, maybe I could give up these things too. So I asked, what to do? How do I approach him? And Kirtananda says, quote, well, you go up to his room. That's all is required, unquote. I was surprised. It was so easy. That's where we left. So we can continue. I had prepared a little speech in my mind. Quote, Bob is revealing his mind. That's the greatest thing we can do. My dear Swamiji, would you kindly accept me as your disciple and teach me about Krishna consciousness? Unquote. I went up to his room without an appointment and knocked on the door. I heard him say, quote, come in, unquote. I entered the room and he was sitting behind his desk. He was alone. I made obeisances and he looked at me and said, quote, yes, unquote. And I said, quote, Swamiji, will you make me your disciple? Unquote. And that's as far as I got. I was going to say, quote, and teach me the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, unquote. But he didn't let me finish my speech. He said, quote, yes. It was so simple. I thought, quote, well, there is nothing else to say. He has accepted me, unquote. So I thanked him and paid my obeisances and left the room. Quote, you know you are not supposed to be up here unless you are initiated. Achyutanand says when Bob was coming out from the room. Judy was flustered. She had come upstairs to put some dirty pots in the kitchen. Oh yes, she replied. Quote, that's just what I wanted to talk to Swamiji about, unquote. And she went into Prabhupada's room where he was talking with a few other people. Quote, Swamiji, could I please get initiated? Unquote, she asked. And he said, quote, do you know the 4 rules? Unquote. Quote, yes, unquote. Can you follow them? Judy says yes. Then you can be initiated in 2 weeks, unquote. Dan was also thinking about initiation, but he wanted to wait. He was chanting 16 rounds and attending all the classes. Despite his reluctant wife, he had always had difficulty with authority figures, but he could feel that the Swami was winning him over and wearing down his impersonal barrier. 2 weeks later, Prabhupada held another initiation ceremony. Bob became Rupanuga and Julie became Jadurani. Dan needed a little more time. It's always to wait and see, take your time. Do not rush to take initiation by some emotions. Unless your mind is fixed to do something, to dedicate your life, you dwell on it. What changes before you take initiation? And actually everyone should think. You know the lifestyle that you are living. Before you even surrender, think about it. What changes are you going to do in your life? Dedicate your life. I remember that I have shared that story in this group, but it's nice to share. I was attending before initiated every Mangala Arati, even though I was living far. Tamal Krishna Maharaj was ready to give me initiation in 1989. And I told Tamal Krishna Maharaj that I'm smoking cigarette. And also I say, I don't have that much faith in you that whatever you say, I can accept it. So give me a little time to have faith in you. And he was extremely happy. And there was another boy who was coming only for 6 months. And Gurudev initiated him because he was begging. He was also coming every single day, Mangala Arati. But then he left after 2.5 years. So Gurudev used to tell me, I'm so happy that you are contemplating everything before you take initiation. That's very nice. He said, I will give you as much time you need. It was so nice to hear like that. And then he said finally, the person who wait long, dwell everything nicely, think about it, what he wants to do in his life, and then surrender. They are the one. They will never leave Ishvan. Hare Krishna. Despite many difficulty may come, but they never give up that faith in Krishna. So we will be embarking on chapter number 10. This may help who has not yet got initiated to dwell on it. Chapter 10, beyond the lower east side, Brahmananda is speaking. But we were shocked that he was going to live. I never thought that Krishna consciousness would go beyond the lower east side. What to speak of New York City? I thought that this was it, and it would stay here eternally. Hare Krishna was becoming popular. Regular kirtan in the park, newspaper coverage. Hayagriva called it the Hare Krishna explosion. The Lower East Side hippies consider the chanting of Hare Krishna, quote, one of the grooviest things happening, unquote. And that the Swami's disciple didn't take LSD, didn't seem to affect their popularity. The devotees were accepted and angelic people, carrying the peaceful chanting to others and offering free food and a free place to stay. You could get the most interesting vegetarian food free at that place, quote, in the parenthesis, if you went at the right time. Parenthesis over, full stop. And in their storefront, on the shelf by the door, were books from India. In the clubs, local musicians play the melody that they had picked up from the Swami when he chanted in the park and at the temple. The Lower East Side was a neighborhood of artists and musicians, and now it was also the neighborhood of Hare Krishna. Bolton Green, he expressed in his word as follows. Musicians were influenced by it. The Krishna chant, Govind, Jaya Jaya, and other chants. I used some of those chants when I recorded. A lot of musicians reach out for this in different ways. We would explode in a short time and blow off, but then keep the chant underneath as a basis. A lot of people found that spiritual vibration even in the midst of the heavy music they were doing. They were becoming devotee musicians. Evening kirtan were always big. Brahmananda used to stand by the back door every night and watch the room fill up until there was no place left to sit. There was a lot of interest in the group, chanting and music making, but after the kirtan, when the talk was to begin, people would start to leave. It was not uncommon for half the audience to leave before the talk began, and sometimes people would have leave in the middle of the lecture. One evening, Alan Gilbert brought Ed Sanders and Tully Kupferberg of the Fox to the meeting. The Fox, a local group that had made a name for themselves, specialized in obscene lyrics. Among the popular songs of Ed Sanders were, quote, Slum Goddess of the Lower East Side, unquote. Group, and I Can't Get High. Ed had wild red hair and electric red beard, and he played a guitar during the kirtan. The devotees were happy to see their prestigious guest. The night of the Fox, however, Prabhupada chose to speak on the illusion of sexual pleasure. Quote, sex pleasure binds us to this material world, birth after birth, unquote, he said. And he quoted, as he often did, a verse of Yamunacharya. Quote, since I have become Krishna conscious, whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it, and I spit at the thought. The fox never returned. To speak ill of sexual pleasure was certainly not a strategic move for one who wanted to create followers among the Lower East Side hippie. But Prabhupada never considered changing his message. In fact, when Umapati had mentioned that Americans didn't like to hear that sex was only for conceiving children, Prabhupada had replied, quote, I cannot change the philosophy to please the Americans, unquote. Quote, what about the sex? Unquote, asked the ISKCON attorney, Steve Goldsmith, one evening, speaking out from the rear of the crowded temple. Quote, sex should only be with one's wife, Prabhupada said, and that is also restricted. Sex is for the propagation of the Krishna conscious children. My spiritual master used to say that to beget Krishna conscious children, he was prepared to have sex 1,000 and hundreds times. Of course, that is most difficult at this age. Therefore, he remained a brahmachari. Quote, but sex is a very strong force. Unquote. Mr. Goldsmith challenged. Quote, what a man feels for a woman is undeniable. Unquote. Quote, therefore, in every culture, there is the institution of marriage. Unquote. Prabhupada replied. Quote, you can get yourself married and live peacefully with one woman, but the wife should not be used as a machine for sense gratification. Sex should be restricted to once a month and only for the propagation of children. Unquote. Hayagriva, who was seated just to Swamiji's left, beside the large dangling kartal, spoke out suddenly. Quote, only once a month? Unquote. And with touch of facetious humor, he asked loudly, quote, better to forget the whole thing, unquote. Quote, yes, that's it. Very good boy. Swamiji laughed. Another joined him. It is best not to think of it. Best just to chant Hare Krishna. And he held up his hands as he were chanting on a strand of beads. Quote, that way we will be saved from so much botheration. Sex is like the itching sensation, that's all. And as when we scratch, it gets worse. So we should tolerate the itching and ask Krishna to help us. It is not easy. Sex is the highest pleasure in the material world, and it is also the greatest bondage. Unquote. But Steve Goldsmith was shaking his head. Prabhupada looked at him, smiling. Quote, there is still a problem? Unquote. Quote, it's just that. Well, it's been proved dangerous to repress the sex drive. There is a theory that we have wars because, unquote. Quote, people are eating meat, unquote. Prabhupada interrupted. As long as people eat meat, there will be a war. So how can we say there will be a peaceful world? And if a man eats meat, he will be sure to have illicit sex. Steve Goldsmith was an influential friend and supporter of the ISKCON. But Prabhupada would not change the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, quote, to please the Americans, unquote. Judson Hall on West 57th Street cost $200 to rent for one night. Ram thought it was time Swamiji tried reaching some of the more sophisticated New Yorkers. And since Judson Hall was near Carnegie Hall and sometimes had interesting concerts and lectures, he thought it would be a good place to start. Swamiji agreed to the idea, and Ram printed an announcement, which he distributed in the Midtown bookstores. On the night of the event, the devotees paraded through the Midtown entertainment areas, beating a bass drum and handing out leaflets. Then they returned to Judson Hall for the program. Only 7 people attended. I remember when I see the very less attendance that one time. I think Tamal Krishna Maharaj in Los Angeles or San Francisco. They were visiting during the book distribution to the church, and they were talking that maybe you can invite our Swamiji to have a talk. And some church agreed. And they were so enlivening that they are going to make the announcement to the members, so there will be a crowd. And how much enthusiastic you become when you feel, oh, there will be a great attendance for Prabhupada program. So they informed Prabhupada. And actually, when that program began, my Guru Maharaj was writing in his Servant of the Servant book, there very few countable people came. And they were feeling bad that, they were saying that there will be a crowd. Prabhupada says, didn't you see whole our Guru Parampara? All the people of all different universities were sitting in the room and listening my class. What a transcendental vision. Okay. The devotees felt terrible. They had misled Swamiji and spent the equivalent of month's rent. Quote, we can cancel the program if you like, Swamiji, unquote. Rai Ram said. But Prabhupada replied, quote, no, let us chant and speak, unquote. So the devotee took the stage and chanted with Swamiji and danced, and then sat beside him as he lectured, his voice echoing through the empty hall. Afterward, Swamiji called for questions, and a young man about 15 vacant rows back asked whether he was correct in understanding that the Swami's philosophy was primarily for reforming destitute young people. Quote, no, unquote, Prabhupada replied. Everyone in this material world is lost and destitute. Even the so-called successful person, because everyone has forgotten Krishna, unquote. After the program, Swamiji sat in a chair by the exit as the few members of the audience were leaving. A respectable-looking couple introduced themselves, and Swamiji sat up very straight with folded palm and smiled. Brahmananda's mother was present, and Swamiji was very cordial toward her. But in general, the devotees were depressed at the small turnout. Quote, I'm sorry, Swamiji. We invited you here and almost no one came, unquote. Rai Ram apologized. But Prabhupada raised his eyebrows and said, quote, no one? You did not see Narad Muni? You do not see the Lord Brahma? When there is a chanting of the Hare Krishna, even the demigod come to participate, unquote. Same thing, I think. Back at the temple, Prabhupada cheated Rai Ram. Quote, I told you, you should have charged money. When something is free, people think it's worthless. But just charge $3 or $5 and people will think, quote, oh, you are offering some very valuable thing, unquote. In Bengal, there is a story of a man who went house to house offering free mangoes, and no one would take this mango because everyone thought, quote, oh, why is he giving away these mangoes? There must be something wrong with them. So he charged 3 rupees, and then they thought, this looks like good mangoes. The price is only 3 rupees, all right. So when people see that something is free, they think it is worthless. Charge them some money, and they will think it is very nice. Like for the book description, people say that we should give free of charge. But my Gurudev philosophy was to really get the benefit, they must pay for something. And he was so expert that he will not waste a moment with someone that he knows he's not going to give anything in return. He will go to the next person. So this is something book distributors should know. Otherwise, that book you will find in the evening in a trash can. Burton Green was a musician, fond of the Swami and fond of banging on the notes of the piano in the temple during Kirtan. So Burton Green is now sharing his experience in his own words. We had a really explosive thing to break out of with this capitalistic, materialistic egg sitting on us. So there was so much ferocity in the music to break out of. But spinning out like that, you could have a nervous breakdown. So it was great to go to the Swami's and chant in his small storefront on 2nd Avenue. The streets were full of Maya and perversion. And his was a place to really mellow out. It was great to chant there, to balance my life. It was great to sit and have prasadam with the Swami and get some real, authentic Indian cooking and chapatis and talk about things, especially when I had very little money in my pocket. It was always nice to go. When Burton asked Prabhupada to attend his piano recital at Town Hall Theatre, Prabhupada agreed. So Brahmananda is explaining. About 7 or 8 of us in our sneaker and jean had ridden on the subway with Swamiji to Town Hall. We went in and took our seats, and the concerts began. Burton Green came out, opened the piano top, took a hammer, and began wildly hitting on the string inside the piano. And it went on for an hour and a half. We were all sitting there with Swamiji, and we all began chanting on our beats. There were only about 24 people in the whole theater. Then the intermission came, and the Swamiji wanted to go to the toilet room. And I went along and helped him, turning on the water in the sink, getting a paper towel for him. Doing this little service for Swamiji seems like the perfection of my life. There was something so great about him that just doing those things was my perfection. And I felt like I was protecting him, like I was his personal bodyguard. Coming up on the subway, I had shown him how the subway worked and answered his questions. It all seems very intimate. Anyway, we went back upstairs to our seats, and Burton Green came right up to Swamiji saying, quote, Swamiji, are you happy? Are you comfortable? Do you like it? Unquote. And Swamiji was very polite and says, yes. Then Burton says, quote, now the second part is coming, unquote. I interrupted and tried to say that Swamiji is very tired and he take a rest at 10. It was already after 10, so I said we had to go back. But he pressed Swamiji to stay for the second half, and so we had to stay. Then the poets came out and recited poetry. We were there until 11:30, and then we had to ride back on the subway. But a few weeks later, I learned that Prabhupada had another reason for going to town hall. He was thinking of renting it for a temple and he wanted to see it. The Gate Theatre was a small auditorium on 2nd Avenue, about 10 blocks north of the storefront. Satsuru. We rented the Gate Theatre for one night. It was a dark place, painted all black. The theatre was almost empty. We had an easel on stage with a painting of the Panchatattva. Swamiji spoke, and his talk became very technical, pointing and referring back to the painting. He described each member of the Panchatattva. He first explained that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality Godhead, appearing as a pure devotee. Lord Nityananda, to the right of Lord Chaitanya, is his first expansion. And to the right of Lord Nityananda is Advaita, who is the incarnation of Supreme Lord. And to the left of Lord Chaitanya, he said, is Gadadhar, the internal energy, and Srivas as a perfect devotee. During the talk, I was thinking that this was maybe too elevated for the audience. But I was sitting close beside Swamiji, and like the other devotees, I was really enjoying being with him. After the great engagement, Swamiji and his disciple agreed that it was a waste of time trying to rent theaters. It was better to go to Thompson Square Park. That was the best place for attracting people, and it didn't cost anything. Utility is the principle, right? Haribo. What time it is? It's 6. Oh, 6:55. Krishna is kind, telling me to look at the clock. So all the devotees has to perform their duties. Thank you very much. I have no word of appreciating all of you to join, despite who doesn't want to sleep in the bed in the morning, right? But you take austerity to join on time. May Krishna reciprocate with you accordingly and make us fixed in our practice so we can deliver our soul from the nations of cycle of birth and death. So I think we should stop and see that if any other question, comment, corrections, or chastisement before we close our session. Okay, there is no questions. So I think we will pray to Krishna that if you so desire, please wake us up next morning so we can utter your holy name with rapt attention. We'll be here at 2 o'clock Central Standard Time, and you can come at your convenient time. We're looking forward for your association. Hare Krishna. So I think yesterday